Mr. Mazen Al-Eshaiker, the chairman of the Injah Development Center, now joins me live, and he's also an economic advisor to the Iraqi National Congress. Thanks so much for coming in tonight.
Thank you for inviting me.
Mr. Al-Eshaiker, I want to start with this. Iraq's Prime Minister, Nouri al-Maliki, has rejected calls for a national unity government. You've advised Iraqi prime ministers. What is your advice to him?
Actually, I know Mr. Nouri al-Maliki personally. He's a good friend of mine. I will advise him that we should actually think of the benefit and the interest of the Iraqi people first. There is one myth out there that the state of law, Dawlat al-Qanun, the group that al-Maliki leads, won the election. Well, actually, they did not win the election. They won 95 seats out of 328. In other words, he won 28% of the seats. 28% does not constitute a majority. A majority is obviously 51. What a group will need is about 165 seats in order to win the election and actually form the next government.
So you're saying he doesn't have a mandate. He needs to rule as though he does not have a mandate.
Exactly, but he is going around saying that he has the most number of seats, which is true. His group has the most number of seats. On the other side of the aisle is the group which I like to call the movement for change. The movement of change includes all the Kurdish parties, all the Sunni parties, and most of the Shia parties. And they constitute about 201 seats out of the 328, and that by itself is a majority. So he should, do what his predecessor, Dr. Ibrahim al-Jafari, do, which is allow somebody else to take over. And the one before him, Dr. Ayad Allawi, it is not a personality issue. It is not something against him personally, but the country has to move on. He did a wonderful job over the last 8 years. It is time for somebody else to take over the prime minister's job. It is simply a management decision to change one manager into another. It is not something personal against Mr. Maliki himself.
Let me ask you about this concept that's been rattling around Washington all day. People are talking about this concept of splitting Iraq into 3 ethnic groups, the Kurds, the Sunnis, and the Shias. What do you think that would do for the average Iraqi, if anything?
Well, any type of breakup should start from within the country. We've seen how Czechoslovakia broke up. It was a peaceful decision by the Czechs and the Slavs to break up. Of course, we also have the Yugoslavian breakup. Of course, we don't want to go down that road, and that is a major civil war. There was a lot of ethnic cleansing that took place to redraw the borders between Bosnia, Croatia, Serbia, and so on. Iraqi people are not calling for the breakup of Iraq. I don't see why people from outside Iraq are pushing the Iraqi people towards the breakup. As most people know, there is intermarriages between Shia, Sunnis, and Kurds, and Christians, and Turkmen. Iraqis are a mixed race. Yes, some of them are strictly Sunnis or strictly Shia or strictly Kurds, but actually there is a lot of mixed marriages. So if there is a breakup, so one person's dad is from Mosul and his mother is from Basra, where would he end up?
That's a good point. But let me move to the impact of this battle that we're watching take place over the Beji refinery. Government officials have said that they have control, but there are conflicting reports of that. We've heard in some cases the Sunni militants have control. How important is this refinery to the local economy and to the global oil market?
It is extremely important. It is the largest refinery in the country, and as you probably would know, there are not enough refineries that have capacity to supply the need of the Iraqi people. So what those refineries, such as the one in Beji, the largest one in the country, is supplying fuel, gas, oil, diesel as they call it, to the power plants that provide the electricity. So it's not as much as the fuel that it produces, but the electricity that will be cut off if that refinery does not produce enough fuel for these, and that will affect maybe 14 or 15 provinces out of Iraq's 18 provinces, which will be a major blackout in the country if the terrorist ISIS take over the Beji refinery.
Let me get to the southern production facilities, which of course have so far been untouched by the violence. OPEC said earlier this week 95% of Iraq's production capacity has not been affected. But based on your experience, and we've watched Iraq go through this before, how long can that last?
Basra is very, very much far in the south. It's a 600 kilometers from Baghdad. And as you know, ISIS has not been to Baghdad yet. And there is no movement within Basra to topple the the government and bring in ISIS and cooperate with the terrorists inside Basra. Basra would be safe for months to come. ISIS will be defeated before they even get to Baghdad. So I don't think there is a need for anybody to panic and for the investors to withdraw because of what's happening in the north.
Let me just interrupt you for a moment with a question about international investment. Of course, Iraq accepting international oil companies to the country since 2008. Now some of them are evacuating their workers. What does that mean long-term for Iraq's ability to attract international investment?
It is obviously devastating, a country where 94% of its income comes from oil. So when the oil industry is affected, 94% of the budget is affected, and all salaries of all government employees comes from the oil industry. So it is devastating for the foreign oil companies to withdraw their employees. There is a little bit of reserve left in the budget that can keep the country floating for a little bit, but this cannot go on for too long. The good news is that...
I've got to let you end it there. Mr. Mazen Al-Eshaiker coming to us from California tonight. Thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it.